Hi there, this is Matt with State of Flux, here with a review for The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and one of those words is very misleading. This is a movie that is by no means extraordinary. But it was one that I was excited to revisit, because I saw this movie only one other time. I saw it opening weekend in theaters, and the thing is when I first watched it, I thought it was alright. I liked it. It inspired me to read the books, which at the time I think there was only 2 volumes of the book. And so I went home, and my dad had the first 12 issues of the book, which is the 2 volumes. I believe it was 12, maybe it was 18 or 16 or something like that. But regardless, it inspired me to pick up the book and read it that very night. And I got about 3 issues in when I realized something, that the movie was a terrible adaptation of a tremendous book. And it was something that I was so captivated while reading that I couldn't believe how much of a misfire that movie was in retrospect. So much so that I clung to that enjoyment of the movie from the first time and chose to never revisit it again, and probably would have remained so had I not opted to do this look back at all the films that DC has ever put out, or DC adjacent. This is a DC adjacent title. Alan Moore's book is super compelling, and he's done several volumes beyond the first 2 that were out there, and he plays with time. He does some way in the distant past before the story that you are reading, and then does further sequels and expands that world. And I haven't really read much of those. I've read the first 3 volumes in total, maybe the 4. But League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the book is fantastic, and I urge you to check it out. And it's one of those books that's so good and such a great encapsulation of these characters that it requires you almost to go back and read the literary works that these characters are pulled from, and it repaints how you view those books. Like, that's how good of a job that Alan Moore did, particularly with Mina Harker and the Dracula and stuff like that. There's a great moment in, I can't remember which volume it was, I think it might have been the 2nd volume, where she's wearing a scarf and she reveals what she looks like underneath that scarf. And her neck is just full of wounds and scars. And she says something to the effect of, like, what, you thought a vampire bite would just leave 2 little holes? It's a true ravenous feed when they do so. And it's like, it was such a powerful moment. Now, I haven't read those books in 20 years or so. And revisiting this movie for the first time in 20 years, I was kind of curious to see how that would play. And one of the things that I really thought was interesting was turning Mina Harker into a vampire in this, which she is not in the books. They also pull in some other characters, probably to grasp at a more American audience. They give us Tom Sawyer, who's grown up to be a cowboy. Now, I thought that is kind of an interesting adaptation. I thought that was kind of neat. And it gives us a villain that's, I'm not going to spoil for you, that is unique to the movie. But the movie is strange. It's a super strange mixed bag in the sense that the screenplay seems fine. It seems almost alright. It is the execution of direction and the focus on really poorly executed action, like just truly badly executed action that just crumbles the movie. And that is Stephen Norrington's problem with this. His contribution is he was not the right director for this. Now, it's weird, because the first Blade movie is pretty fine. Again, I have not revisited that movie in over a decade, so maybe that one doesn't hold up either. But his work here is just so misguided for the screenplay that is presented. And it's really weird. Now, the screenplay is not a particularly good adaptation of Alan Moore's work, but it's serviceable. It's something that I think is fine. What I found most engaging and yet distracting about the movie is how effing similar it is to Joss Whedon's 2012 Marvels of the Avengers. This movie is so Avengers-y that it feels like it's a carbon copy of that movie just done poorly, yet it came out 10 years prior, which like, it was so distracting that it just made me want to watch the Avengers. But think about it. The way that the team gets pulled together in this film is very reminiscent of the Avengers. The way that once the team is together and they're still not necessarily coalescing as a team or a group, are thrust inside a great giant metal ship. And there's the danger that a great hulking monster is going to burst forth from the educated man that presides within one of them. And it's just, like, the parallels are so distractingly strong that this movie did one really powerful thing. It made me want to rewatch The Avengers, which is a movie I quite love. And it's also strange that this is considered, and arguably is, one of the worst comic book adaptations brought to film, full stop. And yet it is so similar to one of the greatest cinematic achievements in the superhero genre, full stop. It's so weird. Like, these movies pair together like a fine wine in the yin and yang of it all. It's kind of jarring. But yeah, this isn't a good movie. But with the elements of hindsight and looking at it and seeing, this isn't only the last time, this isn't only the second time I'm seeing a movie. This is the first time I'm seeing a movie knowing that this is the last time I'm going to see a cinematic icon on screen. And as Sean Connery's final performance, say what you will about the movie, he is pretty damn great in it. And anytime he's on screen, it does pull you in. Now, maybe the shit he's saying is really dumb, and maybe what's happening around him is completely benign to quality, but he is ever compelling. And so viewing this as a final performance, really, was kind of eye-opening as well. It's an interesting movie, not a good one. And I do think we are rife for a proper adaptation for League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. If ever there was a show designed for an HBO Max, or I guess just Max now, I refuse to call it that, F that, HBO Max, or a Netflix or Hulu series, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is probably top of that food chain, and it would make for grand, compelling television that you can do relatively cheap. It isn't an action story, after all. Alan Moore's work generally is not, and yet we keep adapting his works into grandiose action films, such as Watchmen, such as, to some extent, V for Vendetta, both films I will be talking about in the near future. And some of those adaptations work a little better than others. This is, I think, his worst adaptation. In fact, the adaptation that I think works his strongest in his favor is From Hell, which did not turn the story into an action film. That movie has its own problems in adaptation, but turning it into a big action farce was not one of them. But yeah, let me know, what do you think of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen? Are people unfairly harsh about this movie? Probably not. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and actually let me know in the comments down below who you think should be cast as Allan Quartermain and Mina Harker and all of them in an upcoming adaptation. Would there be one? Should there be one? Thanks for watching, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Peace.